How to clean the EGR valve step by step. Has your car lost power? Is it emitting black smoke from the exhaust? Or has the check engine light come on? Then pay attention, because one of the most common causes can be the EGR valve. And here's something important. Many people think that when the EGR valve fails, it absolutely has to be replaced. But that's not always the case. In many instances, the problem lies in accumulated dirt, and a good cleaning can restore it to proper working order. In this video, I'm going to explain how to clean the EGR valve step by step, what symptoms it shows when it starts to fail, how to know if the problem really stems from there, and, above all, when cleaning it is no longer enough and it needs to be replaced. So let's get down to business. What is the EGR valve and why does it get dirty? Before disassembling anything, it's helpful to understand what this part does. The EGR valve, or exhaust gas recirculation valve, is responsible for returning a portion of the exhaust gases to the engine to reduce combustion temperature and help control pollutant emissions. Simply put, it's an important part for the emissions control system to function properly. Where does the problem begin? It's constantly working with dirty gases, residue, and carbon deposits. Over time, all that dirt accumulates until the valve starts to get stuck or malfunction. And when that happens, the engine notices. Symptoms of a dirty or faulty EGR valve. The most common symptoms are usually quite clear. You might notice a loss of power, an unstable idle, jerking when accelerating, black smoke from the exhaust, or even the check engine light illuminating on the dashboard. In many cases, if the valve stays open or closed when it shouldn't, it alters the air-fuel mixture, and that ends up affecting engine performance. That's why it's normal for the car to start feeling sluggish, less smooth when accelerating, or to run roughly at idle. And if you also see black smoke, that's a pretty serious sign that something isn't working as it should. Before cleaning, how to know if the problem is really the EGR valve. And here comes a key point. Because it's one thing for the car to have symptoms consistent with the EGR valve, and quite another for the EGR valve to actually be the culprit. I don't recommend blindly disassembling it. The first thing to do is a visual inspection. If you can remove the valve and check its condition, even better. If you see a lot of carbon buildup or residue blocking the mechanism, you already have a pretty good clue. But if you also have an OBD2 scanner, use it. If the ECU has detected a fault related to the EGR valve, it will most likely have stored an error code. That helps a lot in confirming the diagnosis. And don't just focus on the valve. If your car uses a vacuum system, also check the hoses, connections, and any cracks. Because sometimes the problem isn't in the part itself, but in what controls it. Tools and products for cleaning the EGR valve. Before starting, prepare what you'll need. Ideally, you should have the following on hand. A set of wrenches or sockets, gloves, rags, a small brush, specific EGR or carbon cleaner, and, if necessary, a new gasket. My advice here is very simple. Don't use harsh products without thinking, and don't clean the part as if you were scraping cement. The idea is to remove the dirt without damaging the mechanism. And a very practical trick, take photos before disassembling. Then, when reassembling, it can save you a lot of trouble. How to clean the EGR valve step by step. Step 1. Work with a cold engine. Never start with a hot engine. Let it cool down completely and work safely. Step 2. Remove the EGR valve. Locate the valve, carefully disconnect what's necessary, and remove it without forcing any connectors or hoses. Do it calmly, because many times mistakes happen because of rushing. Step 3. Check the actual condition of the part. Once it's out, carefully inspect the inside. If you see carbon buildup, stuck-on residue, or clogged passages, you already have a very likely explanation for why the car was malfunctioning. In some cases, the dirt is so obvious that you instantly understand what was happening. Step 4. Apply the cleaner. Spray the specific product onto the dirty areas and let it sit for the recommended time. Then use a brush or a rag to gradually remove the carbon buildup. If necessary, repeat the process several times. This isn't about rushing. The goal is to ensure the valve is truly clean and that the mechanism moves freely again. Step 5. Also check the ducts. And this point is very important. Don't focus solely on the valve. If there's a lot of dirt, it's advisable to also check the hose, the ducts, or even part of the intake manifold. Because often the problem isn't isolated. If you only clean the valve and leave the rest of the system full of carbon buildup, the improvement may be very short-lived. Step 6. Reassemble everything. Once the valve is clean, reinstall it correctly. Check the gasket. If it's damaged, hardened, or deformed, it's best to replace it. Then connect everything securely and make sure no hoses or connectors are misplaced. Step 7. Check the result. Once everything is reassembled, start the car and check how it behaves. Pay attention to the idle speed, the acceleration response, the exhaust smoke, and whether the malfunction indicator light is still on. If you previously read any codes with the OBD2 scanner, you can clear them and see if they reappear. When cleaning the EGR valve isn't enough. And this is one of the most important points in the video, because simply cleaning isn't always enough. If the car is still the same after doing all this, then the problem was probably not just dirt. There could be a fault in the solenoid, the electronics, the vacuum system, or even an internal failure in the valve itself. And in those cases, no matter how much you clean it, the problem will persist. That's why I always say the same thing. If the EGR valve is dirty, cleaning it makes sense. If the EGR valve is faulty, it needs to be repaired or replaced. Mechanical EGR versus electronic EGR valve. It's also important to keep in mind that not all EGR valves are the same. In a mechanical EGR valve, a good cleaning often solves the problem when the cause is carbon buildup. In an electronic EGR valve, in addition to dirt, There may be actuation faults or electrical problems. Cleaning can help in these cases, yes, but it won't always be enough. So, if you clean the part, reinstall it, and the problem reappears immediately, I wouldn't insist too much. At that point, you need to check it more thoroughly or consider replacing it altogether. Common mistakes when cleaning the EGR valve. There are several very common mistakes. One is only cleaning the surface and reassembling it too soon. Another is not checking the gasket, hoses, or connectors. It's also very common not to use a scanner when the check engine light comes on, or to assume that all black smoke is the EGR valve's fault. Another typical mistake is not checking if the mechanism is truly clear after cleaning, because this isn't just about removing visible dirt. It's about ensuring the valve is functioning properly again. How to prevent the EGR valve from getting dirty again so quickly? Once cleaned, the ideal is to prevent it from becoming clogged again immediately. This helps a lot by avoiding exclusively urban driving, not constantly running the engine at very low RPMs, and adhering to the car's general maintenance schedule. There's no magic solution, but there is a reality. A vehicle that is always operating in poor conditions tends to accumulate more carbon buildup. And the sooner you detect the symptoms, the easier it will be to resolve the issue with a cleaning before the problem worsens. We'll answer some frequently asked questions. What are the symptoms of a dirty EGR valve? The most common symptoms are loss of power, unstable idling, black smoke, hesitation when accelerating, and the check engine light illuminated. Can the EGR valve be cleaned without removing it? You can try, but cleaning is usually much less effective. If you want to do it properly, it's best to remove it and check its actual condition. How often should the EGR valve be cleaned? There's no exact interval for all cars. It depends a lot on usage, the type of engine, and whether you do a lot of city driving or short trips, which typically generate more carbon buildup. Is it better to clean the EGR valve or replace it? If it's dirty, cleaning it can solve the problem. If it's faulty, has an electrical fault, or continues to malfunction after cleaning, it's usually best to replace it. Should anything else be checked besides the valve? Yes. It's also advisable to check the ducts, pipe, intake manifold, hoses, and connections, because sometimes the dirt isn't just on the valve. So, in conclusion, if your car is experiencing power loss, an unstable idle, black smoke, or the check engine light is on, the EGR valve is one of the first parts you should check. If it's dirty, a good cleaning can often solve the problem. But if everything remains the same after cleaning, then we're no longer talking about just dirt. There's almost certainly a fault. The key is not to proceed blindly. First diagnose, then clean, then test, and if necessary, replace. Without further ado, I hope this video has been useful to you and you can solve your problem. See you in a next video. Bye-bye.